Worship in France are the question of Lucifer, a record of things seen and heard in the secret societies, according to the evidence of initiates. A.E.Waite, chapter 15, conclusion. 15 is the tarot card number for the trump that is the devil. So it's a good number to end this book with, right? It remains for us now to appreciate the exact position in which the existence of the Palladian order is left after all suspicious information has been subtracted. We have examined in succession the testimony of every witness to the discovery of Leo Taxil and M. Adolphe Rocco, and it has been made entirely evident that they are of a most unsatisfactory kind. I make no pretense to pass a precise judgment upon Leo Taxil, for I am not in a position to prove that the Palladian rituals which appear in Are There Women in Freemasonry can be characterized as invented matter. Granting his personal good faith, there are still many obvious questions, to which one is the connection between the Palladians and Masonry. There's a Palladian tarot deck and some Palladian other stuff that I've seen, and it's outside of this book here. I really don't see too much diabolical being claimed about the this is overturning the conspiracy theories, but so Palladians is another term for Satanist. I'm not sure of that. As regards the so-called Paris triangle, from which the information was obtained as regards the ritual itself, there is obviously no such connection, except the fantastic and arbitrary rule that the initiation is imparted exclusively to persons possessed of Masonic degrees. It is patent that such an institution is not Masonic, though it possesses some secrets of Masonry. The Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, as we have seen, is an association based on precisely the same regulation, but it has no official position. Should a circle of Catholic priests conspire for the formation of a society dedicated to black magic and the celebration of the Satanic Mass, that would not be the Church diabolizing. No institute and no society is responsible for the unauthorized acts of individual members. At the same time, if it should be advanced by hostile criticism that the invention of rituals is easy, and that the literary antecedents of Leo Taxil are not precisely of that kind which would lead any cautious person to place blind confidence in his unchecked statements, I am compelled to say that I should find considerable difficulty in challenging such a position. Now, yeah, people can make up stuff left and right, but unless you're going to convince people there's a secret rhythm and, program people with that sort of stuff and basically, I don't know what this means, just say it, just do this, to have effectual rituals, it takes some knowledge of mythology and all that sort of thing. Magister Marin, the next witness, deserves, by his position and ability, our very sincere respect. Compared with the octogenarian sentimentalist of John Kostka, the violence of Signor Murgiata, and the paste pot of M. de la Rive, one breathes a plein poitrine in the altitudes of ecclesiastical erudition. Artificial as their eminence turns out, the art sacerdotal does not concern itself with preposterous narratives, so that it disputes nothing with the art of Bataille. It has never stood in need of conversion, and hence is exempt from the hysterical ardors and languors of Diana Vaughan. But the Archbishop's interpretation of Masonry is based upon another interpretation of Kabbalistic literature, which can be accepted by no person who is acquainted therewith, and would have scarcely been attempted by himself if he had known it at first hand. In the matter of Palladian masonry. He can only tell us of what he has learned from Rousseau. And remember, the importance of honesty, people. The importance of honesty. And if all you're doing, if you swear to keep stuff secret, and you're just breaking oaths left and right just for the sake of breaking oaths, why should we trust you if you lie about your oaths? Or maybe you didn't intend to break the oaths, but it's like, you're proving that you can't be trusted. Now, I will sometimes say something about a person or a group or something and leave the person or the group or something. I won't let known who the individuals are so I can say the point. But I'm not betraying people's confidences and saying, oh, this person did this, this person did this. It's like, am I bringing them to the punishment? No. Then why do I need to spread the word, It is agreed upon all sides that we dismiss Dr. Bechtel. He does not disclose the name and nation which he adopted during his Masonic career, and hence the persons whom he states that he met are, with one exception, not in a position to contradict him, because they are not in a position to identify him. The personality of the one exception is not particularized, but may be guessed without the exercise of much skill in divination. And here I must leave the point, not because I am disinclined to speak plainly, but thus risk the possibility of being mistaken, but because Dr. Bechtel informs us that the one confident is in his power, and that he could procure for him or her a term of penal servitude. Last, he is not in a position to exhibit his Palladian diplomas, which were demanded by the dispensing authorities when he first fell under their suspicion, and have not been returned to him, while we are therefore prevented from checking his affirmations. In what most concerns our inquiry, we see that all points where it is possible to control him he has completely broken down. The miraculous element of his narrative transcends credit, and his statements upon a multitude of ordinary matters of fact are beneath it. When we connect these points with the mode of publication he is seen fit to adopt, and remembers the kind of motives which usually attaches to that mode, we have no other course but to set him entirely outside consideration. His book is evidently valuable only to close the question. He may have visited Charleston. He may have made the personal acquaintance of Albert Pike, Gallatin Mackey, Phileas Walder, and his daughter Sophia. 3 of these persons are dead and cannot testify. The 4th acknowledges that he attended her medically at Naples. She protests against his betrayal, but she does not betray in return his Masonic identity, though I need scarcely add that she does not substantiate his statements. On these points, my readers may be reasonably left to form their own judgments. Miss Diana Vaughan is a lady who, in spite of much notoriety, is not in evidence. With one exception, no credible person has ever said that he has seen her. That exception is Signor Margiotta. It would not, however, be the strongest line of criticism to dispute her existence. We may accept very gladly that all her Italian friend is good enough to say in regard to her personal characteristics. But we know that she has tried to deceive us, with conspicuous ill success, it is true, yet in a gross and most wicked manner. As to Signor Margiotta himself, with all his imperfections, he is the strongest witness to the discovery of Leo Taxil. I have admitted the great apparent force which belongs to his enormous array of documentary evidence, and I have established the nature of the complications which make that evidence extremely difficult to accept. And that's something you'll hear Freemasons say. Both the guy who said it was okay for us to, for me to circle the Freemason Lodge with a camera and say my bit, Freemasonry isn't a secret society. It's a society with secrets. And he related how, there was somebody he goes to church with, and the thing was like, well, don't tell anybody at church that I'm a Freemason. It's like, it's part of the rules of the lodge. It's, what happened, the members are the members. That's really the secret. The secrets, it's not like the general concepts are secret. But the actual form of the rituals and who's members and that sort of thing, who has what degrees. If they want to unveil that, they can unveil that. But actually, back, even some of that was, again, you can say I'm a Freemason, but you're not supposed to say, reveal to the profane that this person's a Freemason. But anyways, I should go to Charleston and do a video around a Freemason lodge. What do you think? Well, the Albert Pike's Lodge. That's Lastly, Jean Cosca and M.A.C. de la Rive, though they came within the scope of our inquiry, are not Palladian witnesses. It would appear, therefore, that Leo Taxil and M. Adolphe Rocco are, for the most part, neither honored in their witness nor in a position to stand alone. The evidence which has grown out of their discovery is in an exceedingly corrupt state, and in summoning the question of Lucifer as an impartial critic, I shall therefore simply propose to my readers the following general statement. In the year 1891, Leo Taxil and M. Adolphe Rocco state that they have discovered certain documents which show the existence of a Palladian society claimed to be at the head of Masonry, and in the year of 1895, Signor Domenico Margiotta states that he belonged to that society and gives further particulars concerning it. A number of other witnesses have also come forward, whose evidence must, for various reasons, be completely rejected. It is in all respects much to be deplored that Signor Margiotta has largely and approvingly cited the testimony of two of these witnesses, who are most open to condemnation, and that he has himself exercised an imperfect and uncritical censorship over papers which have come into his hands. From first to last, all documents are open to strong suspicion. Such is the slender residue which results from this sifting of Lucifer. I have made my final statement. Thus, indeterminate in its character, it is because I wish my readers to form their own conclusions as to Leo Taxil and Domenico Margiotta, and because I believe that, before long, further evidence will be forthcoming, and I have little personal doubt as to the ultimate nature of the verdict. But, at the present stage of the inquiry, with all the exposures which I have had the satisfaction of making fresh and clear in my mind, I would dissuade anyone from saying that there is nothing in the question of Lucifer. It is at least obvious that there is no end to its impostures, in which respect I do not claim to have done more than trim the fringes of the question. It is not therefore closed, and I may so venture to affirm it assumes a fresh interest with the appearance of this book. It deserves to rank among the most extraordinarily literary swindles of the present, perhaps of any century. Well, what have we found of the early Catholic Church? The changing of the Bible with every generation, making it bigger in parts, smaller in parts. Ding, 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 ding. 10,000. And even before we have a historical Catholic Church, they were changing the contents of the Bible. So what was the case of the Bible? Was that a swindling of the people to the fanaticism that can be called Christianity? By fanaticism, I mean it not as hate speech. I mean it as saying, they worship Jesus. yeah, they worship Jesus instead of following him's parts, and that point can be made, but in other ways. The field which it covers is enormous, and there is no room, and more than room, for a score of other investigators who will none fail of their reward. Within the limits of a moderate volume, it is impossible, within the limits of a moderate volume, it is impossible to take into account the whole of the issues involved, while the importance which is not to be attributed to the subject should not be lightly regarded, seeing that in France at the time of writing it provides an apparently remunerative circulation to 2 monthly reviews, and its literature is otherwise still growing. At the present moment, and for the purpose of this criticism, a few concluding statements alone remain to be made. They are concerned with the position of Italy in connection with the so-called universal masonry, some aspects of the history of the Scottish Rite in connection with the recent revelations, and the interference of the Catholic Church, wisely or not, in the question. Universal Freemasonry can be tied down to the phrase, well, actually a couple phrases, men's orders and didactic art, and that's included architecture and other monuments that say something. Some aspects of the history of the Scottish Rite in connection with the recent revelations and the interference of the Catholic Church, wisely or not, in the question. Because they're the Lucifer of the Lucifers. If they worship Jesus, any other claimant to be an enlightener is particularly wicked, even though that's not really what's meant by it. It's not an antichrist usually, but the one Mason whose rank corresponds in Italy to that of Albert Pike in America is not Adriano Lemmi, but Signor Timoteo Reboli, sovereign Grand Commander of the 33rd and last degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. Adriano Lemmi is or was Grand Master of the Craft Section of Italy, and Deputy Grand Commander only of the Supreme Council of Italy of the 33rd degree. The pretended Grand Central Directory of Nepals, which governs all Europe, in the interest of Charleston, with Giovanni Bovio for sovereign director, is a Masonic myth. Pace Signor Marghiata Signor Bovio is a member of the Grand Master's Grand Council and a 33rd degree at Rome. There is a Neapolitan section of the ancient and accepted rite, but it has powers only up to the 30th degree, and as such has no authority in general government, nor does Bovio appear to be a member of the Neapolitan section, though, as a member of Lemmi's council and a 33rd degree, he no doubt has his share in the government of the Neapolitans. The history of the ancient accepted rite, as given by Signor Marghiata and sketched in my second chapter, is an incorrect history. The facts are as follows. A person named Isaac Long was engaged in propagating the French Rite of perfection of 25th degree in America before 1796. Isn't that the largest, the oldest church that I've done a video of? 1796, or is it 86? No, 76. I think it's 76 or 79 or something. In that, well, whatever the age is, it's 1700s. In the year he gave the degrees to one de Grasse and also to de la Hogue, who established a consistory of the 25th degree at Charleston in 1802 of the Vulgar era. This consistory had blossomed into the Supreme Grand Council, 33rd degree, and a little later period they forged the name of Voltaire's friend Frederick the Great of Prussia to what Mr. Yarker terms one of the most stupidly concocted documents ever palmed upon an ignorant public. However this may be, Long does not seem to have been at any time a member of this body. This is how the Mother Council of the world is said to have come into existence, and Charleston has established Supreme Councils 33rd degree between 1811 and 1846, and France, Ireland, Scotland, England, and elsewhere. There is no foundation for the legend of the Charleston Templar relics, namely the skull of Jacques de Molay and the Baphomet, beyond the fact that one of the grades, the 23rd degree of the old rite of perfection, and the 30th degree, the modern rite, uses the representation of the papal tiara in its ceremonies, and also of the crown of France. In allusion to Pope Clement V and Philip le Bel, I can find no Mason of whatever grade or rite soever who has heard of Pike's Sefer de Habarim. His book called Apatno are lectures in which he imparted extracts, unacknowledged, from Alephus Levi. They may rank with triangular provinces. Ooh, triangular provinces. Lucifer, chess, Louis, the skull of Malay, and the Palladium. In other words, they are lying myths. Nothing which Pike has, or is known to have written, has any Luciferian complexion. He has collected into his lectures a mass of mystical material from rites like Memphis and Misraim, but it is alchemical, theosophical, or dealing with ancient symbolism, the mysteries, pre-Christian theology, etc. See, just, how these things were understood in ancient times. It's not saying, I'm Albert Pike, you must obey, you must follow my interpretation. There's no evidence of that sort of thing. As to Pike, himself a Mason of high authority, observes in a private letter, he was one of the greatest men who ever adorned our order. He was a giant among men. His learning was most profound, his eloquence great, and his wisdom comprehensive. He was a scholar in many languages, and a voluminous writer. He was an ornament to the profession to which he belonged, namely law. He fought the cause of the red man against the American government many years ago, and prevailed in a large degree. I believe he was a true and humble servant of the one true and living God, and a lover of humanity. Having regard to all these facts, it is much to be regretted that the Catholic Church should have warmly approved and welcomed the extremely unsatisfactory testimony which connects Masonry with diabolism. When the report of diabolism first reached the ears of English mystics, and it was understood that the Church had concerned herself very seriously in the matter, I must confess that a hidden motive was immediately suspected. A recrudescence of medieval black magic was in no sense likely to attain such proportions as to warrant the august interference. It seemed much as if Her Majesty's government should think it worthwhile to suppress the League of the White Rose, but when it transpired that the question of Lucifer was a new aspect of the old question of Catholic hostility to Masonry, the astonishment evaporated. It was at once seen that modern diabolism had acquired an extrinsic importance because it was alleged to be connected with that fraternity which the Church has long regarded as her implacable enemy. I must be permitted to register clearly the general conviction that if black magic, sorcery, and the Sabbath up to date had been merely revived demonomania had been merely concerned with the black paternoster, the black mass, or even with transcendental sensualism and the ordeal of the pastos, the Roman hierarchy would not have taken action as it has, nor would the witnesses concerning these things have been welcomed with open arms. As a fact, no interest whatsoever is manifested in the doings of diabolists who operate apart from Masonry. Now, the hostility of the Continental Masons towards Catholicism, insofar as it provably exists, has been largely or exclusively created by the hostility of the Church, and we know that he hates most who hate the first, insofar, therefore, as the Church has concerned herself by encouragement, which has something of the aspect of incitement, the recent revelations. We shall have to bear in mind her attitude, while the history of forged decretals and bogus apostolic epistles will reveal to us that she does not invariably exercise a searching criticism upon documents which serve her purpose. The sorcery of the 19th century is in no circumstances likely to justify the faggots of the 15th. The term means something different nowadays. It might be easier to justify the sorcery, ritual drug use, throwing things to chance, is where we get the terms from, but obviously used for evil magic. Black magic is, black magic, white magic. Let's not down it too much, magic, the shifting of consciousness, the art and science of religion. As much by mystics as by the Catholic Church, modern black magic may be left to perish of its own corruption, but an attempt on the part of the Church to fasten the charge of diabolism on the Masonic fraternity has credibility on another motive than that of political hostility, which seems held to justify almost any weapon that comes to hand. At the bottom of her hatred of Masonry, there is also her dread of the mystic. Transcendental science claims to have the key of her doctrines, and there is evidence that she fears that claim. Black magic, which, by the hypothesis, is the use of the most evil forces for the most evil purposes, she does not fear, for it wears its condemnation on its forehead. But mysticism, which accepts her own dogmas and interprets them in a sense which is not her own, which claims a certitude in matters of religion which transcends the certitude of faith, seems to hint that at one point it is possible to undermine her foundations. Hence, she has ever suspected the mystic, and a part of her suspicion of Masonry has been by reason of its connection with the mystic. She has intuitively divined that connection, which by Masons themselves, for the most part, is not dreamed at this day, and when suggested is generally somewhat lightly cast aside. It would be quite out of place at the close of the present inquiry, which from a wholly independent standpoint has sought to justify a great fraternity from a singularly foul aspersion, to attempt enforcing upon Masons a special view of their institution, but it is desirable at the same time to not be just towards the Catholic Church, and to affirm that we as mystics are on this point substantially in agreement with her. The connection in question was for a time visible, and remains in historical remembrance from the beginning of its public appearance till the close of the 18th century. The history of Masonry is part of transcendental history. That connection has now ceased to manifest, but there is another which is integral and permanent, and it is a matter of common principles and common objects. Let it be remembered, however, that the connection is not identity. It is not intended to say that the threshold of Masonry is the gate of mysticism, but that there is a community of purpose, of symbolism, of history and indirectly of origin between the two systems. So could that be to say that we look at this more in terms of the right-hand path instead of the left-hand path? All true religions, all true morality, all true mysticism have but one object, and that is to act on humanity, collective and individual, in such a manner that it shall correspond efficiently with the great law of development and cooperate consciously therewith to achieve the end of development under all the mysteries of its symbolism, behind the impressive parables of its ritual, and as equally, but if possible more effectually concealed beneath the commonplace insistences of its moral maxims. This end is also proposed by the occult initiations of Masonry, and be defined more explicitly as the perfection of man, both here and hereafter, and his union with what is highest in the universe. We shall see more clearly, not only that it is the sole fundamental principle of all religion, its very essence, divested of creed and dogma, but also inherent in the nature of symbolical Masonry, and inwrought in the whole system of Masonic ceremonies. As mystics, however, we consider that the ethical standard of Masonry will produce good citizens to society and good brethren to the fraternity, but it will not produce saints to Christ. That is an excellence which is other than the moral, and stands to morality in precisely the same relation that genius bears to talent. The moral virtues are not the summum bonum, nor the totality of all forces at work in the development of man, nor actually the perfect way, though they are the gate of the way of perfection. So, let's return to the word Luciferianism for a second here, as I leave the last bit for another video. Progression. Not per se opposed to any spiritual community, but a progression that doesn't rely on its authority. Now, people can, of course, they can turn to that authority. Okay, we're developing our character and such, and then we go to church for our moral things, or some other house of worship, or read some scripture, or however it's done. Lux et nox, nox et lux.